So welcome to our Homeschool Concierge one-on-one. We're here with Cathy Duffy. I'm Wendy Eklund, the founder of Homeschool Concierge, and I'm a longtime homeschool mom of 3 and an advocate for our community. And I'm here with Paige, who helps me with everything that I do.
Yes, I really love helping. I am a longtime homeschooling, unschooling mom. My kids are a little older now, but I've still got one left.
Thank you.
Homeschool Concierge is a nonprofit organization serving the homeschool community. We are run by homeschool parents. We offer free virtual talks like this one year-round on a variety of educational topics. We have a free monthly newsletter that goes out about twice a month with original articles and unique resources. We monitor and help the community as a whole respond to legislation. This may be legislation impacting homeschooling, charter schools, and school choice in general. We offer access to free resources on our website. These are links of various vendors and homeschool experts, as well as books, curriculum, etc. And we offer in-person and right now virtual field trips, educational events, and workshops, and we hope to offer more as we're opening up. And we offer educational and homeschool consulting for families as well as charter school staff who maybe need help understanding homeschool culture a little better.
And we're here with Cathy Duffy from Cathy Duffy's Reviews. I'm sure you've all heard of her website where she reviews homeschool curriculum, but I have always wanted to know more about Cathy Duffy and her homeschool experience and what brought her to create such an amazing resource for families that are homeschooling. So, Cathy, can you tell us a little bit what made you decide to homeschool? Did you know before having kids that you were going to homeschool? Was it something you discovered after having kids? What's the story?
This will be, it sounds otherworldly to modern homeschoolers. We started homeschooling in 1982. That was the dark ages of homeschooling.
Right.
Before we started homeschooling, there were very, very few. They were underground and, scattered unschoolers. I discovered one Christian homeschooler in our county before we started, but there were a number of us families that started the same year. It was interesting. We found each other. Just by the grace of God, we found each other. Started doing park days, and
right.
So it was really different. No, I wouldn't have thought about homeschooling earlier because nobody talked about it. It wasn't on the radar. Not a part of the discussion at all. I think I'm trying to remember when there was one book that came out about homeschooling. I mean, I don't know, it doesn't really matter, but there was one book that came out a few years, prior to when we started that got a little bit of buzz going, but it was still an unknown thing. And I had my boys, my 2 older ones. My oldest was in second grade, middle one in kindergarten at a Christian school, and I was content with it. It wasn't perfect, but it was good.
Right.
And so I wasn't looking for another option. But it's like God getting my attention. Very strange. That's a whole nother story. But we ended up, it's okay, I'll try this, and I did. It was like there was no going back once we started. Right. It was, I could really see the advantages. And yes, it's hard. Yeah, it was especially hard then because we didn't have everything you have now available to you. But
right.
No, it was just fantastic for the boys, for the family as a whole. And looking back on it, here now we've graduated ours long ago, and they have kids and they're homeschooling. One of the families now.
Okay.
Anyways, the results at the end, your family connectedness, knowing each other it's really hard to describe to people who haven't experienced that. But we know our kids, we enjoy being together, playing together, doing whatever. But it really strengthens family bonds in a way that's so different than the rest of the culture is used to. And that's
right.
One of those benefits that people don't talk about very often, but that I've so much appreciated.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a huge benefit of homeschooling. The constant connection and then not having to feel rushed and stressed out in your relationship, running between school and all of the extracurricular activities and worrying about homework and getting dinner on the table. It's just, our lives just flow so much better, I think. And I do have experience. Athen went to school for a little while, and it was the same thing, having to get him up in the morning when he didn't want to get up in the morning. He's not a morning person. So it just felt like a constant fight.
Yeah, well, I felt like I lived in the car so many days, you know, getting them here, there, and yon, the scheduling pressure. It was like getting out of the rat race.
Right.
When we could get on our own schedule, so much better.
Yes, exactly. So I think the next thing I was always have been curious about, like, what made you decide to build such a website to help people pick curriculum? And like, I know it's been a lifelong project of yours, but what brought you to do it?
Well, when we started homeschooling, there was so little available to us.
Right.
Bob Jones didn't exist. You know, Becca wouldn't sell to homeschoolers. The major publishers for the public schools, no way were they going to sell to homeschoolers.
Right.
So we were really scrounging to find resources. And I enjoyed researching curriculum.
Okay.
So, that was just kind of my thing. And I started off on that hunt for looking for things to work with my kids. And my kids were so diverse in their learning styles. That really got me off going different directions. Because we started with some Becca curriculum that did not work at all with my oldest son. I just did a couple of weeks after I went to all this trouble to get it. And I said, oh no, this just is not going to cut it.
Right.
So we started making up unit studies and, doing a lot of other things just on our own. And so that kind of stuck with me all the way through, that we did a lot of unit studies, worldview-based unit study when they got older, just experiential curriculum a lot of times. We did use some standard things too. It wasn't just one thing. We were making it up as we went.
Right.
But we would share stuff. Now, this was before the internet existed.
Right.
So we typed up newsletters and sent them out, to each other, and, just shared information at park days. And it grew very organically from that, as things, started getting, more sophisticated, then I started putting things together into a book, simple little comb-bound book the first time around, And it grew over the years. I don't know how many editions of books I've gone through. I've lost track, but there's probably 30 or more different books on choosing curriculum that I kept updating and redoing.
Wow.
Because things kept changing so quickly and radically. And then the website came along. I don't even remember when we started the website, but it was kind of sitting there at a kind of a low level for a while, because I was doing another job for a while after my youngest son graduated.
Okay.
And so it was kind of in the background. And then when I quit that job, I decided, okay, I'm going to really focus on the website for a while here. And people came along with suggestions. People are wonderful. You could do some other things. You could have affiliate relationships. You could do other things here, and we put on comparison price, stuff, and really started working on it. And it took off like crazy. It was just amazing how, it was so much more helpful when I got those tools on there. And then we gradually added the advanced search tool. That was a big project to do, but that I thought was really important, because I reached a point where we have so many reviews on the website. I've got more than 1,000. I don't even know how many reviews. And I can't remember all of this stuff, it's just, there's too much. And I thought, even going in there looking for things, if you don't know what you're looking for, it was too much. And so that's when I thought, okay, we have to do this advanced search tool, so you can put in, well, I want, this grade level, this subject, and then we put in tags for all these other features. So, if you want a religious viewpoint or a secular viewpoint, or, we've got that, honed down for the number of selections and learning style features and the technology involved. Do you want it online or, on physical product, that sort of thing. Anyways, approaches to education, lots and lots of features there that you can choose to help narrow down to exactly what's going to work for you.
Yeah, so, I just want to tell you that is extremely helpful, because that combined with the list, like if you register for free, which everyone here should, because I can't believe it's so generous what you offer, then people can put together these lists. So I went in before the talk to explore this, and I've created so many lists for my one son. I don't even know if you'd allow us to create like 25 lists.
I don't know that there's any limit on it.
I don't know that there's a limit, but I thought of every possible subject that I would need to plan for him for his final year of homeschooling, and just created a list. So then every time I visit one of your web pages, one of the review pages, right, I can just easily, there's a little box, all my lists appear, and I can decide where I want to add that review and save it. And then I can edit it, and it's so helpful and so amazing that you offer that for free to people.
Right. It's free, yeah.
And it grew because I was doing the books first. And in my books, I always use the first chapters to tell people how to choose curriculum, because, I'm talking here about learning style, features, and approaches to education. And for new homeschoolers, that's like, what? What?
Yeah.
I don't even want, I thought I'd just choose a homeschool curriculum, second grade, here it goes. And it's so much more than that. And so I've always thought, you start with, goal setting. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? And then, identifying your child's learning style and your teaching style, looking at that. And, working through these different things. And what approach to education do I prefer? Or what approaches? Not that it has to be one thing. And so I worked people through that in the beginning chapters of the books. And I have, some charts and different tools to help them do that. And I thought that was still important, but I didn't want to keep doing the books, the big printed books, and then having to update them every 5 years. So I narrowed it down to one. My latest book is only an ebook, How to Choose Homeschool Curriculum. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing I'm selling, really. You can still get the old 102 Top Picks book. I keep it up there because people still want it, but that's from, I don't know, it's out of date to some extent now. Right. So How to Choose Homeschool Curriculum has those chapters on how to choose homeschool curriculum. That's where people should start. Right. And I've tried to make that as inexpensive. It's $8.99 or only $5.99 if you check off to be on my mailing list, which will help you too. But if parents would start with that and know what they're looking for, then they can go to the website and get a lot more advantage out of using that advanced tool search. They'll know what they're checking off, what they're looking for, what they should be looking for. So that's, so there is, a little caveat. I do make a little bit of money off the books, but the books is really, that's such a minor thing in the scope of it all.
Well, I'm glad you're making some money, because so many of us do so much for free to give back to this community that we love. I'm glad that you're able to make some money.
Yes, absolutely.
For your hard work, because you are offering a lot.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice, like I remember when I first started homeschooling, I came from a traditional education background. I went to private Christian school. I went to public school. I tried all different kinds of schools when I was growing up. And so I had in my mind what education was supposed to look like. And then when that didn't work for my son, I thought, oh, well, I can bring him home. I can do this at home. And, I set him down at the table and started trying to do schoolwork with him. And it didn't work. I don't know why I thought that if the trained teacher couldn't get him to do it, why I thought I could do it. So then it was like, well, now we're fighting. I didn't want to fight with my child. Then I wanted to put him back in school. And so it was actually, I was with a charter school at that point. And it was actually my charter school teacher who told me, well, then don't use the curriculum, just throw it out and follow his interests. And I was like shocked, like, what are you talking about? I don't have to use curriculum. And so that's what we did. And from then on, we haven't looked back. We've just been child-led, and he doesn't really use curriculum. I think when we started high school, we tried Oak Meadow just so I could get an idea of like how to match like projects with the concepts for him at a high school level. So we did that for 1 year and we liked that. But what is your suggestion for parents that are new and kind of struggling with this idea?
Well, it's back to the goal setting.
Right.
You have to know what it is you actually want to accomplish, what's most important to you. And it can't be the same as what the public school is doing. And that's more and more true, as they're going. I'm just realizing my microphone's kind of far from me. Does that sound a little better now?
No, you sound fine. You sound good. Yeah.
Good microphone. Anyways, um, the the goals that you have should be tailored to suit your child. What do you see in that child? What, like you talked about, directed. What do they want to learn? If you have a child who loves math, you want to, free them up to go crazy with math, and no reason they can't move ahead of schedule, whatever they want to do. But if you've got a child who hates math and is never going to go into a math related field, use wisdom in the way you're doing math with that child. Don't expect them to do the same thing that other child would be doing. And let them use other creative ways. We did a lot of math games.
Right.
And that's, that was just, again, with my oldest child, that works so much more efficiently. I'm seeing it with my grandkids too now. I have a granddaughter who is needing to master her math facts. She's 7. And you give her a worksheet and she's just, she could take 3 hours to do one worksheet, just hating it and coming up with 5 million excuses and stuff. But we started doing addition war. You just take a deck of cards, plain regular old cards, your face cards are worth 10, your aces are worth 1, and so each player puts down 2 cards at a time and you have to add them together to decide who wins. Mm-hmm. Wow, does she do different? When you give her a game, she's there clicking and, and you have to say what you've got. Nobody's going to guess at what you've got. You have to say what you've got. So, she doesn't get any shortcuts on this. She has to say, and who's higher, who's lower, who wins,
Right.
She has to be thinking about that. So I've seen that with her over and over again, that, the math games work so well with her, just like they did this with her dad. Her dad is my oldest son, the one who was last on. No surprise there.
Right.
But I think parents oftentimes think, well, that's just games. We're not doing schoolwork.
But you are.
It's much more effective.
Yeah, you're learning the concepts. Absolutely. Right. And you could find that a child who you thought didn't like math actually blossoms by learning these concepts, and that puts it together for them, and then they take off on their own with math.
Yeah, exactly.
True. And how each child is different. I think that's a great point. What you find works for your oldest might not work for your next one.
Right.
So you have to keep reevaluating, and even from year to year, I've noticed, they change themselves. Yeah. So
I was using Cuisenaire rods to show math concepts. So, like math you see, or any, these rods and blocks type approach. I used it a lot with my oldest son. It really helped him. But I'd pull them out with my middle son, and he'd look at it and say, "Do I have to do that? I already know what it's going to look like." And he was much better in math. He didn't need to do them. The only time it was helpful was when we hit long division. We did use it with him to demonstrate what happens with long division. Showed him one time. He goes, "Oh, he had an aha moment. That was fine." That was it. But even with algebra, I use them with algebra, even with my eldest son, but not, my youngest son. My middle son didn't need it at all.
I mean, that's the thing, is there's so much out there. There's so many alternatives to what the public school or any traditional school is offering. Right. And just your website is a great place for people to get exposure to things they may not have ever heard of before, and get a review of it a little bit too. They don't have to buy it and then return it or be stuck with it.
Yeah. And I love the idea of unit studies, and sometimes people think that limits them to all of the prepackaged things, but it doesn't. And I think this is where tuning into the interest of our children really makes a difference. If you find they are interested in something and you ask them, how would you like to learn? What would you like to do in relation to this? That can really go some interesting ways, but there's something more substantial that's happening there than people realize, because our children are learning how to teach themselves. Right. And one of the most important goals I had was that I wanted my children to be self-educators. I did not want them to be waiting for someone to spoon feed them information before they learn things.
Right.
So my oldest son was interested in archery. I know nothing about archery, not my thing at all. But he got books out of the library. Of course, we were good friends with the library. He got every book in the library about archery. And this was, he was 10 or, so not very old. And he read everything about archery. And then he was carving his own bows and arrows out of sticks. Wow. But anyways, they were in Boy Scouts. And so you had to get the archery merit badge in Boy Scouts. And he really pursued that on his own. He became a certified instructor for archery. He became very good at it.
Oh, wow.
But, through that process, he taught himself to a large extent, and then, got instruction at certain points and then practiced and then taught other people how to do it. My middle son was interested in, of all things, naval history. NAVAL, ships. And I didn't even know this. He was researching a lot online, but books, he'd get books, James books about ships. These, if you're not a specialist about it, they're big books of just data about ships.
Right.
And he was creating a database on ships because he was just really interested in this. So he had like 50 pages of it before I even knew what he was doing.
That's
wow.
amazing.
And again, I knew nothing about this. He joined the Naval Research Institute, and we took a field trip. He got to go back there and visit, and but it was his idea, totally not on my radar at all. And those were the things that I think really had a huge impact on them.
Right. Well, and having the time to explore those interests deeply, which is not necessarily what kids have when they're being run between school and extracurricular. Right. So
yeah, well, I think parents today overschedule their kids, and I'm no criticism intended here to people, but there are so many things to do,
right,
that it is so easy to not want to miss out on anything, and you overschedule them, and then you do not leave time for them to learn, to explore, to develop their own interests.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, when your kids are asking if they can stay home one day this week.
Listen to them.
Yeah.
Give them a break.
And I don't know if you've experienced this, but what I've experienced is I don't really have kids that get bored because they've been so used to having time and learning how to use that and tapping into that creative force inside themselves. And so I don't have kids, people say, well, how do they not get bored? Don't you get bored? No, it's just not come up for us.
Right.
Yeah, don't put them on the screen, but to give them time and the ability to go out and do things, research things.
Yes.
Even a lot of our kids nowadays are creating their own video games and whatever their passion is, they're doing that kind of stuff too. Like my son, like your son with the naval thing, I didn't know anything about what cryptids were, and we're going to do a road trip for my older son to teach him all about U.S. history. And Hudson, my middle, this was before the pandemic, right before the pandemic. He's like, well, Mom, I want to stop in this place and this place and this place. And I want to go to the Mothman Festival in West Virginia. And I'm like, the what festival? Where? So we did. And I realized that he had all of this crazy knowledge about cryptids and Bigfoot and all of these things that I didn't really know anything about. And I was like, well, how did you learn this? And it was all with online research. So yep, since they just need that free time to follow their interests. Yeah.
But then that helps set them up for life in that they can start to look at careers even in terms of what am I interested in and what would I need to learn to prepare for that. Yeah. Instead of having to, just check off one of the things that's offered by a college, and I'll, what major are you offering? The world is so much broader than that. Right. We're creating our own majors, our own ideas, our own jobs. There is no job description for what I do. And an education degree would not have helped. Probably would have gotten in the way of what I do.
Well, yeah, I always did wonder if you had a background in like curriculum development or anything like that, but it was just a personal interest in looking at curriculum and helping your friends.
It was. I did get interested in how children learn and studied some of that because of I started the Sunday school program at a church. We were, with a new church, and anyways, I, had been helping with Sunday school, and then I ended up. I'd helped in Sunday school at another church. And then when we started this new church and, kids were, you know, it was just crazy. I said, okay, I'm going to start a Sunday school. Okay. They said, yeah, go for it. But that really pushed me to really study and learn a lot more too. So that background was there a little bit. So.
I have to say, since homeschooling, I've learned way more than I did in school. Like even with all this legislation stuff, like I taught myself everything that I've learned over the last 5 years if they started attacking homeschoolers. And so the things that even we're inspiring ourselves to learn while teaching our children to be, you know, lifelong learners.
Well, it's necessity too.
Right.
And you learn something better when you need to know it. You really care about it. There's an application for it. True for us, true for our kids.
Yeah.
So that's the way it's been with all of this.
So true. Yeah. Diana is asking, what has been the biggest gift from homeschooling? From her own experience, Cathy, what do you feel like?
Well, I think the family relationships probably was one of the biggest ones. And I come from a Christian background, and teaching worldview to our kids, I think, was also one of the biggest benefits, because we spent a lot of time going through all of the subjects. We started, you know, this happens, you know, in the elementary years, but really concentrated in the high school years, where we go through the different subject areas in a timeline fashion, but going through with worldview questions in mind about beliefs, ideas, foundational questions of why does this matter? What do we believe in? You know, how does it affect? And so we did history and literature and, you know, the standard subjects, but we also did philosophy, government. We went further out. Economics, spent a lot more time on economics than you would typically do. Just looking at different systems and evaluating and, you know, analyzing things a lot more, and a lot of current events, reading the newspaper and talking about what's going on, and, you know, what do you think about this? And that was, to me, one of the best aspects of our homeschooling, and just raising curious kids, you know, that they would look at things and ask questions and analyze things, learn to think for themselves.
Right. I like that.
Well, I mean, I imagine that transfers to your kids, because now you've modeled how to have those types of relationships with their own kids, and that's just such a valuable gift that you're passing on.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it was immensely important. I did get to teach. We did some group classes on worldview stuff, so I did get to teach other kids and other parents, and, you know, do some other work with that too. But yeah, I think that was one of the most rewarding things we did, because it really had such long-lasting impact.
Great.
Well, Diana thanks you for your comment, and she says, agreed.
Good.
Yeah. I think it is true. I felt like when I was brought up in a private Christian school when I was young, that I wasn't necessarily getting the other perspectives. And so then when I was put into a public school, it was like culture shock to me. So I had to to me, with my children, as I homeschool them, I want to make sure that they're aware of like kind of everything. I hope I haven't gone too far the other way, but I want them to be aware of everything. And I want to make sure that if they believe in the Lord, that they believe in the Lord because they want to believe in the Lord, not because they learned it with 2 + 2 is 4.
So, yeah, not just another subject.
Right.
And I would play devil's advocate with them. I know, you know, there were some kids that, you know, are just so black and white, you know, and I said, well, what about this, you know, and I, you know, present a contrary viewpoint, you know, and they were just like, well, how could you say that, you know? So you better, you know, think about it, because people believe things for, you know, they have their reasons. And you should understand and think about what other people, where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And weigh the evidence, and, you know, you decide what makes sense. You know, and I have confidence in what I was presenting to them. You know, keep doing research though, find out for yourself.
Right. Well, and also to be able to have these conversations with people that don't share your same values or views, and to be able to do it with respect and still care about that person on the level that you care about them, but you don't have to agree. You don't have to all agree. Yeah.
But you can have an interesting conversation.
Yeah, totally.
And that's what I love to do. I don't
Yes.
care if you agree with me or not. Let's just talk.
We
Right.
have another question from Isabel.
Oh, Isabel. Yeah.
She says, feeling a bit overwhelmed about where to start with homeschooling, torn with how to follow the California standards while finding ways for my child to enjoy learning. And just before I let you answer, Cathy, I would want to ask Isabel how you're homeschooling. It does make a difference if you're privately homeschooling and you're totally free, or you're homeschooling within some kind of program. That could be a different answer for you. And then she says it would be with a charter. So I had a feeling based on your question, it might be with a charter.
Right.
I'll let Cathy answer that. But before I let you go, Cathy, I would just say you don't have to be with a charter if you don't want to be. There is another path for homeschooling in California, and you can just be completely free, Isabel, if you want.
And then you don't have to follow the California standards.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm an absolutely big fan of private homeschooling, not under the charter, because of that. The California standards are, worrying about that is a nightmare. I would not want to have to be worried about that. And again, that puts their goals above yours. If you start thinking that way, then you're just checking off boxes and doing things without regard to what your child needs. So I highly advocate going the private route, and it doesn't cost you anything to do that. You buy your own resources, the state doesn't pay for it. But I find that so many people, the things that you really want to do, yes, you're going to do that anyways, but it doesn't have to cost a lot. There's so many free resources available these days too.
Right. I was with a charter school for 12 years, and I will tell you that if you're going to choose to be with a charter school, make sure that you have a very good relationship with that teacher that they're matching you to, because I never wanted to worry about the standards or look at the standards or be bothered with the standards. And so I would just tell my teacher, well, at first they would give me like a checklist of things I had to do, and that made me crazy because I was like, oh, I have to do all of these things. And so then we were miserable homeschooling. So then I said, this is making us miserable doing it this way. How else can we do this? And so she said, well, let's just have our meetings and you just tell me what you did. And so then we would have our meetings, we'd sit, and my son, of course, wouldn't talk because he's super, super shy. He'd like hide between my legs. And so I'd go through everything. And then like, I noticed like every month she was telling me, oh my gosh, you did way more than you needed to. And so she'd then match it to the standards based on what I said we covered and what she like looked at. He hardly did any paperwork, but we would have pictures of field trips we'd been on. And so she would match it. That would be her problem. And I never had to deal with it. I just had to remember what we had done. So then I got to a point where I was writing things down like, oh, we did this today. We went here today. And then she started following me on Facebook so she could see what we were doing in co-op and what we were doing. So yeah, I never had to worry about that. So if you have a good relationship with that teacher through the charter school, they should be able to match those standards. But again, the charter schools, we're no longer with a charter school because they're not as flexible as they were.
As they used to be.
You have to just see what works for you and what doesn't.
And I want to say, if you're really new here to homeschooling, there's always this fear that you're not going to be accomplishing the state standards unless your child is sitting in a classroom for 7 hours getting lots of busy work. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make school sound terrible, but you'd be surprised when you're really engaged how much you're actually learning. We started with a charter, and when it became difficult, which for us was first grade, we left and homeschooled privately. And then when my teens saw that lots of their friends were getting money for classes, I gave them the decision, letting them know that there might be more busy work and there might be things you have to do. And they were nervous, like, what if I can't test right? Because my feeling was, if you're going to be with a charter, we're going to do it right. And we're not going to opt out of testing. And some people might disagree with me, but I had them do the testing. And I was surprised because they got all high levels on concepts. Well, I wasn't surprised, I guess is my point, but they were surprised. Right. And those other things that you need to build up, you can do that very quickly, Isabel. I know that you mentioned your challenges. Your child may want to go to a digital art school later on. I would advise you to enjoy life now and worry about later, but be living an enriching, wonderful life. Really actively engaged in all the resources that homeschooling offers you.
And I don't see that private homeschooling ever has stopped anybody from going to
No.
any further education, even the Ivy League schools. Many of the colleges actively recruit homeschoolers because that they know they tend to be more independent learners.
Right.
And
That's
now with this
right.
explosion of homeschooling over the last year, that's just the reality, that homeschooling is just one other option, whatever way you do it. So the only time I should mention, the only time it does seem to still matter is for sports scholarships for college.
Mm.
And I'm not an expert on that. HSLDA knows all about it, but you have to check off boxes. That gets to be a real controlling factor on your curriculum if you're trying to get a sports scholarship. So,
yeah.
but that's the big deal.
Yeah, that's true. And also, I feel like, Isabel, while homeschooling, if you don't get so wrapped up in having to check off all the check boxes for the standards, your daughter is going to have a lot more time to do all of this digital art and the stuff that she's interested in. I think we talked yesterday, and she's very into so many things. And it sounds to me like you're already supporting her in like following her interests. I think she's going to have no trouble getting into school. I think was it you, Isabel, I was talking to yesterday, and we had the guy from the college on with us, and he's like, she could do classes here when she.
That was me.
Yes, it was you. Okay, good. Yeah, so like I was just looking at the website yesterday. It was for Orange Coast College for their digital arts program and theater arts. No, it's TV and film and like AV and VR and stuff like that. And they can actually start as soon as they're in 9th grade. And you can ask the dean of the program to let them in early if you feel like your daughter is ready for it. So I was looking into it last night. I was actually going to email you. So check that out, Orange Coast College. They have a similar program at Santa Monica Community or City College or whatever it's called. So yeah, email me later and I will help you with that.
Yeah, I think that's again one of the benefits of homeschooling, that you can accelerate for the kids that are ready. Not that we should do this with everybody, but they can do dual enrollment in college classes ahead of schedule. My middle son was 14 when he started taking college classes because he was really ahead of schedule. But at age 18, he was tutoring for the history department over at the college.
Wow.
But nobody knew how old he was. You couldn't really tell just looking at him.
Right.
And he was sharp, and he did a great job. But again, that came from that early interest in history that he explored. But he really loved history, and made friends with one professor over there. Anyway, that's the sort of thing that commonly happens with homeschoolers when you let them pursue their own interests. Just let them jump ahead, let them learn wherever they can learn, and it may be on their own. The college may not be helpful.
Right.
They can sometimes have better access to technology and the latest resources outside the college environment. Right. So, whatever works.
Well, that was the interesting thing he was saying yesterday when we were talking to the gentleman from Orange Coast College, was that they have some grant that helped them build this program. And so they have the latest technology. So he said that they actually have better technology than Chapman University has, and they have a film school. And so you can come here and do it for much less money. And if you're in high school, it's free. So definitely help your children find those resources. Yeah.
And that whole landscape is changing. COVID just accelerated this with college and career training. Yeah. The cost of college has gotten out of sight. The cost of the loans and everything. It's done. It's that model is no longer functional.
Right.
So that is going to be upended in the near future.
Right.
And the choices available, I think, are going to broaden. I hope that's the direction it's going to go. I don't see how it can't.
No, I agree.
There's an education revolution happening for sure.
Yeah, well, and so parents need to keep that in mind and not worry so much about the present situation, but it's likely to be much freer.
I agree. We have 2 questions.
Oh, hang on.
Sorry,
I wanted one thing. Sorry. No, I wanted to remind everyone, like, you don't need to get so tied up in what the California standards are, because California is now ranked last in education for our whole entire nation.
My goodness.
So we don't need to worry about comparing ourselves to what's worst, in my opinion. And then I wanted to also share Paige, like we're talking about the education revolution, and we a couple of talks ago, go look for the recording, had on the University of the People, which is an amazing resource for tuition-free university classes. And they have how many different pages?
They have 6 degree paths. They're very practical. All of their instructors are from the Ivy League schools. Because they're a nonprofit, the Ivy League school professors are donating their time and their resources. Yeah. And you only pay for the exam. So that it's not completely free, but there's no tuition.
But I was looking at a program and it was just over $4,000 for a master's degree. So definitely check that one out too. We have a whole recording about it where we interview them and talk to them. So
and then so 2 questions, because I want to make sure we get those more. In the comment section, Diana O'Daniels is saying, comment for Cathy or question, is there a free resources or curriculum list?
That's interesting, because I was talking to my web guy recently. I said, we need to add a category because there are increasing numbers of free resources. And so I have started compiling a list, and we're talking about putting a tab on the website that, just quickly identifies the free resources. So that's coming.
Oh,
because,
good.
Yeah, because there's just so much out there now that people need to know.
Yeah, I do.
And you can just go in there and search, put free. You'll get other, you get other stuff you'll have to sort through. If you just use a regular old search, right, in the middle of the page, just put free, and you can sort through, and, it'll take more work to get it that way.
Oh, good. Great tip. Thank you.
I do, Diana, have a list that I share with new homeschool families when they contact me, because my advice is don't invest in curriculum right when you start, and take some time to get to know how your children learn and explore learning together, and then start looking at curriculum if you feel that you need it. So I have a whole list of free things that I send to people that contact me. So I just put my email address in the chat. If you email me, I will send you that same list that you can look at. And I don't make any recommendations within the list, but I send it to you as a resource to see if you like any of them. So let me know if you want that.
Well, and I just wanted to recommend to anybody who's homeschooling privately, we did so many field trips. That was a huge part of our homeschooling. And every museum has some kind of free resource, free activities, free curriculum even. And we homeschooled like that for a couple of years, just based on our field trips.
Yes, totally. Okay, I love field trips.
Yes, we have a question from Stacy Vincent. I'll be starting homeschooling my daughter in kindergarten in the fall. I'm not quite sure yet what type of learner she is or teacher I am. Do you have some favorite curriculum that you'd recommend as a starting point for math and language arts?
What do you think, Cathy?
I'm a minimalist. Math and language arts, that's first, know your focus. Don't worry about history and science and everything else. If you do some of that, that's great, but math and language arts, there are free reading programs you can start out with, and if you want to, but there are really expensive ones and everything in between. I would start with some of the free resources first. I just found it, reading is not that difficult now there are some children who have struggles with learning to read. I do acknowledge that. And some, it just doesn't work as easily, but for most children, if you just, approach it phonetically and work through it, it's pretty straightforward, easy to do. So yes, I've got lots of resources on the website that, are very inexpensive too, that will help you do that. So lots and lots of choices for that. Math, same thing, that there's free. I think I have a page still up on my site. Well, I think it's first grade, how to do first grade math without curriculum. Because I wanted to give people an idea of how to do that. So you could look at that article and get a sense of what's there. But things like, the math war, those kinds of things you can just do using objects, counting whatever's there, everyday math, whatever's around you, using that to teach math concepts. It's not rocket science. You can have them, do work pages, in the workbooks where, what things match each other, or you can have them sort the laundry and put socks together, do something useful with their time.
Right. Yeah. And cooking together.
Yeah. It's not that hard.
Right. And I also found with my struggling readers, just making sure that we read a lot.
Yes.
Where they were hearing me, following along, and just spending time in literature.
Yes.
And
yes.
if I couldn't read, putting on books on tape, different things like that. So they were hearing words. So.
That's one of the most important things we do in homeschooling, just open the world of books to them.
Yes, right.
Yeah, we did book clubs for kids that weren't yet reading.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds kind of silly, but just to encourage them, you don't have to finish the whole book, but we're going to have a fun field trip. We're going to have a fun activity. And then just reading aloud in fun places, like going to the zoo and reading aloud there. Going into the jacuzzi at night with hot chocolate and reading aloud there, right? You can get really creative. And I think for the kindergarten age, you may not yet know what type of learner she is. You guys are kind of still getting to know each other, and she's still growing. She's still in this really crazy developmental stage. So if you don't yet know even the first year of kindergarten, I think it's okay. I think you guys can just spend time together and figure out what she likes to do. And then lastly, there are online quizzes that you can take. I don't know which ones to recommend, I'm sorry, but learning style quizzes, things like that. Maybe even for you as a teacher. I know that I ended up having to succumb to unschooling because I was a terrible teacher of my own children. I got frustrated so easily, but then I ended up teaching enrichment classes to other homeschoolers, and it just never worked for my own kids and I, but they found other teachers and I found other students.
Yeah. I want to say something about learning styles too, because I think it's often difficult to pin down a child's learning style, even kindergarten, first grade. Sometimes they're a little older before, that really starts to solidify. Right. But you can often see if they're a very wiggly kid, mm-hmm. or the kind that will just sit still and, pay attention, those extremes are obvious to you. And that'll give you a clue. Because if you got a really wiggly kid, don't make him just sit there, right. Just let him jump while you're reading aloud to him. Let him run around in circles, whatever suits them, should, use that.
Oh, yeah. And often when you think like, oh, my gosh, they're not even listening to me. I can't tell you how many times we were in the backyard with Athen writing whatever it was he was writing around, and me like reading and trying to make my voice louder so he'd hear me. And I'd be like, he didn't hear anything. And then like later on, he'd be like, oh, Mom, earlier when we were talking about this, and he would have totally been listening. And like, but my mind like, oh, you need to be sitting at a desk. And so it was like he had to keep proving to me that that's not how he learned. That's not how I learned, Mom. But they don't even necessarily think like, oh, they're not getting this. They're not listening to it. They're not, because they are. They're picking it up. Right. Yeah,
and I think a lot of people new to homeschooling envision a classroom at home. Mm-hmm. And I did. I got 2 used school desks, for my 2 older kids there. We put them, never ever used them. They were great for Legos because they could put things, down in the bottom part and on the seat and on the top, they had all these constructions in process. But we never did homeschooling in anything that looked like a classroom. We did have a whiteboard that we used from time to time, especially as they got older. But, the kitchen table, the floor, the couch, beds, whatever, outdoors, the park. My kids would say, well, Mom, doesn't school ever end? No, it doesn't. Sorry.
Yes. I love that question. Well, when do you stop for the summer? And I'm like, we don't. Like, we're constantly learning. Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes very much a lifestyle.
Right.
Yes.
It's so funny. I often see those posts on Facebook at the beginning of the school year, like, how did you set up your schoolroom? And I always want to take a picture of my completely destroyed playroom with just stuff everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, this is where we do. Everyone else has these beautiful areas with their desks, and the books are all nice, and ours are, my house looks like a bomb went off.
Well, what works for one family doesn't work for another. And if your kids respond well to having that structured setup,
yes, I'm like that, right?
Then go for it. but don't
I
feel
like
like you
that
have to.
structure, but my children do not.
Well, and I think sometimes what we talked about kids changing too. You know, suddenly my teenager's decided he wants to sit at a desk. And I'm so excited about this. Like, this is great. What kind of desk? And he's like, calm down, Mom. Calm down a little bit there.
Right.
So, but they can change, and that can go wildly from one direction to the other. And that's all normal and just part of the normal development of a child in a homeschooling family.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely embrace whatever each child needs. Right. They're all different.
And just to touch on the standards for the California standards, when I was with a charter school early on, and it wasn't as fun as it was a couple of years ago, I looked at the standards just out of curiosity, and I was really surprised at some of the standards. They wouldn't be things I agreed with personally. Like kindergarten, you have to teach all the federal holidays. And that becomes like a curriculum thing. Like that's where the projects come in. And I thought, well, we're already kind of covering that, but I'm not sure I want to start history there. I'm not sure that that's a standard I think is essential anyway. So aside from some of maybe the reading and math benchmarks that are important, I'm not sure all those standards you're going to agree with anyway.
Well, even in math, the probability, statistics, graphing, that's down in the early grades. And they really need to be focusing on their basic math computation, getting the math facts down, just, the basics. And I don't see for a lot of children that it makes sense to be trying to cover so many topics as they're trying to do in the standards. So question that. If you don't agree, you don't think it works for your child, don't do it.
Right.
Yeah, everybody should take a look at them. You'd be surprised.
Right. Go check out her Cathy Duffy's reviews and site.
Oh, I had a question.
Yeah.
Do you have a team of people helping you, or is it you writing all the reviews?
I write the reviews. Many years ago, I had a couple of people trying to help me, and I ended up re-reviewing because, I come to it with a broader, I've looked at all these other things, and so I look at things in the context of other, comparison. And so it didn't turn out to be very helpful. And then recently, I did get in touch with this gal. I'm not sure, I don't remember how it happened. And I've had her help me with 2 reviews. And that's worked a little bit better. So I really would like to share. There's just way more than I can get through. I have requests to review that, I have to turn down a lot of them.
I can imagine.
But it's still very difficult because I'm reviewing things again with, all the years of experience of looking at all the different things in comparison to what else is out there. How does this fit in? And how would a parent use it? And, I think I've developed kind of a real expertise in understanding what's available and what you might put together or what might suit different situations.
Right.
Anyways, it's very tough to...
Just going to have to clone yourself, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and also to know that it's being reviewed from the same, like, you're the one reviewing it also. It's coming from the same perspective.
Right.
Of how you look at curriculum. So if we're looking at what you've reviewed and say we really loved the curriculum that we picked through your site for 2nd grade, and now we're looking for something for 4th grade, we know that it's been reviewed the same way. And so I think that that's a value.
Yeah. And, and I think people that follow me over years can, they start to pick up on, the fact that I like unit studies and I like that type of approach, and I lean more towards Charlotte Mason, a little towards classical, and that combination of things. And they pick up on that, I think, over time. So yes, and if you're not going that direction, you maybe to just watch for what you're looking for.
Right. Yes.
Well, Isabel has commented, this was great. Thank you. And we feel the same.
Cathy, thank you so much for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. And we feel like we've met a homeschool rock star.
Yes.
Homeschool grandma. No, it's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. So have a wonderful day.
Okay, you too.
All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.